Hello and welcome to the Minefield podcast from Anfield Index Pro. As always, I am your host, Alan O'Donoghue, and joined by my partner in crime, Dr. Andrew Vincent. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I think I might go back to being Debbie McGee from last time.
You'll always be my Debbie McGee. Debbie McGee.
Thank you. It's that kind of day. It is.
It is that kind of day.
Um,
Are you doing well, Andrew?
about Liverpool.
Yeah. So today we thought we'd delve into momentum a little bit, but momentum from the perspective of how we're playing at the moment versus the results that we're getting, and how important that could be as we build for the rest of the season. And I think, look, we all know that certain people think momentum is complete poppycock. No one, it's completely made up. It doesn't exist. And then there are those of us who kind of go, no, there is something to it. There's more than just A plus B equals C. And I think the perfect example of that is Leicester City when they won the league. They got off to a good start. And if you were to look at the quality of their coach, the quality of their players, they weren't the best team in the league, but they just managed to do enough and get a good enough start and maintain that to a level that was enough to get them to win the league when all the other teams fell short of the points total that they would normally hit. But we're talking about Liverpool. And for me, what I find interesting is that since the last international break, things, while I'm watching the matches, don't seem to be clicking as well. We have moments of brilliance in matches, and we've been good at executing during those moments of brilliance. So actually scoring while we're playing really well. And we've had moments of luck where the quality of the opposition that we've been playing haven't been able to maximize or capitalize on our challenges or their play. And we're recording the day after Liverpool beat Bologna 2-0. And I think last night's match was a perfect snapshot of what's been happening for us this season. But, Andrew, we have a coach who is the first coach in our history to win 8 out of his first 9 games. We have won 8 out of 9 games. We have conceded so few goals. We are scoring goals and we're winning. What's happening?
I have 2 thoughts.
Great.
One of them, if we're thinking about momentum and how winning affects our ability moving forward. Like, I think if you're someone who just says momentum isn't real, I think you're not willing to ask yourself the questions or approach the question with enough flexibility to change your mind. That's a you thing, not you. But I think, like, for someone, momentum's not real. I think, like, cool. Like, if you want to classify it, how you classify it and make your argument, like, you're wrong. You're ignoring an experience that people have, that people talk about, and the idea that what has happened before doesn't affect us, change the way we think about things, and then on a cognitive, emotional, focus level, change the way we approach what's next is just like, you're just so like we could go into again kind of like how, like, the mechanisms of momentum, and it's not necessarily just like, hey, you scored last time, you're more likely to score this time. Like, I think someone who's looking at it like that is going to be like, look, it's not real. And it's like, okay, you're looking at the wrong thing. It's about how an individual takes the previous event, reacts to that event, makes sense of that event, and then how that moment of making sense of and reacting affects how they approach the next event. And so, and then how that affects outcomes moving forward. Winning the last game doesn't make you more likely to win the next game, except that winning the last game makes you more likely to focus on the things that went well, makes you more likely to focus on strengths, makes you less likely to feel worried, makes you less likely to feel anxious, makes you less likely to feel focused on things going badly. That emotional state being better builds more confidence, which allows you to focus on doing the things you need to, which increases your likelihood of winning, but is not the only variable in that chain. And so with what we have going on now, the fact that we keep winning allows us to keep focus on maximizing our process without having some of the frustration or confusion or annoyance or this thought of, well, something's wrong. And so if you're trying to work on putting a process in place, but you're losing, then part of what you're battling is, well, this isn't working, this is going wrong, what do I need to change? Whenever you have a lot of people saying, well, what do I need to change? And you're trying to build a process, it makes it really hard to refine and continue something, because you have people who are trying to switch things, and really what you're trying to build is automaticity and familiarity. And familiarity and constant change they don't fit together. So it's you can't do both of those things at once. So what's the benefit of our continued winning other than points? And that's the whole thing, right? Is winning. The benefit of the winning is that it allows us to keep building without having to ask ourselves some of the questions or be derailed. Because every game, Slot is saying, great that we won, happy that we won, there's things that need to be improved. And that's a great mindset to be in. So we can just kind of keep doing that, picking on the one or two things. And there's not some bigger question about, is any of this going to work? Is this going to work eventually? It's well, it's working now and we can get better, so that it builds buy-in and helps them. So that's great. The other thought that I have about all of this is sometimes when I'm working with athletes, when they get to a certain point with other stuff, when we get through some of the initial, what are your strengths? How do you use those as focal points? How do you navigate stress, anxiety? How do you kind of essentially maintain your own momentum, right? And make sure that your own internal narrative and your emotional state are moving you in the right direction. One of the ways that I strongly encourage people to think about an open sport, soccer would be like this, ice hockey's like this, basketball's probably like this, but it's a high event sport, so it's a little different. Field hockey would be like this, is in terms of key moments and key skills. And so with key moments, the idea is across an entire sport, an entire soccer game, right, an entire football game. As an individual player, the reality is you might only have 5 minutes of the ball, and that's probably a lot, actually. Of the 5 minutes you have on the ball, let's say you're Alexis McAllister, right? Let's say you're going to make what's a high number of passes, 90 passes in a game. Of the 90 passes that you make, 75 of those are probably going to be pretty straightforward passes, right? Maybe 50 of those are going to be pretty straightforward passes, right? But they're not going to be game-breaking passes. Let's say you have 3 situations in a game, 5 situations in a game. 5 of those passes are game-breaking passes, where you can really make some sort of big change. You can affect the game. It's either a through wall that's going to play someone in. It's a big switch that's to open space. There's not a lot of those that happen. across the game. Not a lot of moments actually where an individual player can affect the game. And so with some of these open sports, the way I encourage people to think about them is you're doing what you need to do, you're staying on top of things, but you're waiting for your key moments. And you need to know what your skills are so that when those key moments come, you can take advantage of those in a meaningful way. And that's how you affect the game. And if you have 5 chances to make game-breaking passes and you successfully do that 3 times, you've had a great game. You know, like that's what we're looking for. If you're Mo Salah and you get a chance to score and you score, cool. You know, like obviously he seemed to have had more chances yesterday. So for everyone listening, I was not able to watch yesterday's game. Yeah, I will go back and watch it, especially since that's a perfect example of what he's talking about. But it's about taking advantage of those chances. And so that's kind of what I'm wondering. It's like you look at the numbers of this process, and from an external view, it's like, okay, like I saw Wolves, and it's like, okay, we didn't look great. Like the eye test was not great, but the numbers for Wolves were good, sustainable. Like you would look at that and be like, I feel good that we would win that game most of the time if we play it out in that exact way. We didn't give them many key moments. Like we didn't give them many situations to take advantage of, except for the one that we put in for them, like which we fabricated. And we gave ourselves enough opportunities and took advantage of those opportunities that we were able to win. And I wonder if that's part of this system, and that's part of slot ball, is that, yeah, there's areas for improvement, but he built a group that's really good at being ready for and taking advantage of their moments and restricting the number of moments the other team is getting, and can be patient and consistent in that. And I wonder if that's part of what we're seeing is a lot of it's not pretty, but a lot of it doesn't have to be. If you're not giving anything sloppy away, but you're taking advantage of the 2 or 3 moments you have, you're going to win most of the time.
Yeah, I like that. And I think when we look at the players, maybe so obviously our players are going to be better than most teams' players as a collective group. But our players don't always play well. And, you know, recently our players have been getting criticised, especially our attacking players, and some of our midfield players have been getting criticised for, you know, sloppy passes and things going astray, and not taking the chances that they could. But maybe what you're saying, if I'm understanding you right, is that there's an acceptance by Slot and the players that as we are embedding this new style of play, that these moments are going to happen. There is going to be times when, you know, Mo doesn't make the right pass. Szoboszlai kicks the ball straight away to the opposition where, you know, everyone looks like, well, what the hell is he at? But maybe he's given the right ball, but the other player isn't in the right position that they were meant to be. But what Slot has done is got the players to buy into the fact that, yeah, but you're probably better than most teams that you're playing, so you will get these moments to execute.
I suspect it's I don't know if that's how it's talked about.
Yeah, and I'm just talking.
I imagine like maybe the version of that would be more like the McAllister did the interview before Bologna. As per usual, I have watched a lot of the interviews.
As per usual, I haven't.
And he talked about in Slot's, what are his demands? He said, we have more patterns of play, essentially, on the offensive side of the game that we work on than we did last year. And so there's situations and plays that were designed and we're looking for. In preseason, you could see it with like the ball up to Mo that comes directly back and then tries to get played in behind, right? Like that's a set pattern of play. That's something we work on and rehearse. what I'm sort of imagining is that Slot maybe has 2 or 3 of these that they're really focused on. And the idea is, well, let's build these. And if we can get these 5 times a game, we're going to score 1 or 2 of them. We're going to score 2 or 3 of them, right? That's going to give us chances. That's going to put us in position. And he talks like this a lot, where he says, are we putting Mo in position? Are we putting Darwin in position? Are we putting people in positions to score? If we can consistently put them in these positions to score, eventually they're going to go in, because these are good players. So rather than saying, hey, we're a good team, we're going to be able to make these chances, I think what he's saying is we're designing a system around these chances. If Szoboszlai kicks the ball to the other team and you're like, what the hell was that? He's saying if we're making this chance 5 times, I don't care about that much, right? Like, I'm not going to focus on that much. So maybe there's a whole bunch of sloppiness, but if we're making this chance 5 times and we're not giving a lot away with our sloppiness, and we're getting everyone back, and we're just congesting the box like he's talked about before, like on the defensive side of the ball, we're not giving away big chances, then we're okay. That's probably how I would think about it. Like, if I were sort of coaching in this way, or like if I were, and it's actually something I talk with athletes about a lot, is like, how do you ignore the 1% mistake? And like, by the 1% mistake, what I mean is, like, if there's something that you do correctly 99 out of 100 times, and then you make that mistake, usually this is the one that athletes beat themselves up for the most, or we all beat ourselves. Oh, I was so stupid. How could I do that? And it's like, who cares? Like, you're going to do it right the next 99 times. You don't need to work on it. It's not a gap in your game. If every time you get the ball, you kick it straight to the other team, address it. That's important.
Yeah.
But if this is something you do 1 out of 100 times, then don't worry about it. It's not something that needs to be fixed. There's going to be other places in your game that you need to maximize and improve. And so, like, I agree that, like, when I watched Wolves, like, there's a lot of, like, those 1% mistakes of, like, they're sloppy, they're annoying, they break things down. It was interesting because, like, I was surprised people were so high on Gravenberch after that game. I felt like all of his passes were like 1 or 2 yards off. Like, he had his moments. And this is kind of a good example. Like, I think he's a player who's like, Slot has helped him dial into his key moments. Getting the ball and turning and dribbling, driving the ball through the midfield, and then getting space and being able to play that pass. That's his key moment. Like, I think if he does that 4 times a game, he's making a big impact. Mm-hmm. I think he probably could benefit from cleaning up some of the other stuff that he's doing. But I think he's consistently making a big impact because he recognizes that's his key moment. So that someone said, hey, this is what you do well, go do that. And I think he's really connected with that. And then the rest of what he's doing at a high enough level that it's not necessarily causing us to give up a bunch of big chances. Mm. But I feel like sometimes his short passing, like his standard passing, is off by like just a couple of yards. It's just not right on someone's feet, or not right where they're going. They have to slow down a little bit to get there. But in his key moments, he's doing a lot. And those are the ones that are sort of mattering.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you can clean up some of that. But even if you don't, you're making a positive impact on the game.
So is it almost an acceptance that we're not perfect all the time, and it's about leaning into the times where we do things to a good enough, high enough level, and that outweighs the mistakes most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Gravenberch got man of the match again last night. That could be 2 or 3 in a row, I'd say.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, yeah. And go on.
Yeah, no, and so the idea with this, and like it's a different way of looking at the sport you're playing. I'm usually focused on individuals with this and not with teams, but this is what the team version of this would look like. Is like, we're going to get 3 chances to play the ball up to Mo, back to the midfielder, in behind to whoever's running in. All right, so we're going to get 3 chances for that maybe during the game. And then we're going to get two chances where we're going to get two chances where Gravenberch picks the ball up through the midfield, can beat his player, he can break the man-on-man marking system, and that's going to give us a chance. All right, so that's like 5 chances that we get. We're going to get these moments, we're going to prepare for these moments. And as long as there's enough of those that we can generate enough opportunity to score, we will score because our players are good enough. And then it's like, sure, like you clean things up, but you clean things up in service of the things that make you effective. Not everything needs to be perfect. We don't need to look 100% all the time. And I think in this case, I don't know, it's hard to say it's luck because our numbers don't make it look like it's luck, right? Like in a real way, the XG specifically is what I'm looking at. Like, so I listened to a lot of Dave Hendrick, just a lot. Like, and so like, I know like one of the things that he's seeing right now is he's saying all the time, like we're getting cut open through the midfield and teams can play through the middle way too easily. And we can't play through the middle that well. Those are probably important long-term things to look at. But in the short term, we're making chances and the other team aren't making that many chances. So we don't have to scramble around to fix that right now because the other teams aren't making a ton of chances. No, if you wanted to say, well, we haven't played anyone good, but if we keep playing like that against better teams, then like this is a problem. Maybe that's true. And I don't know. But yeah, it's like from a key moment, key skill perspective, we're putting people in the spots to do their things and we're getting them a few opportunities a game to do it. And if you like even with Mo, right? So like, let's say 50% of the time he converts those chances. And yesterday there were 8 situations where he had an opportunity. Okay. He had maybe a bad day, but he made 25% of his moments work. You know, like if you can get Mo 8 moments a game, and he's 50% with those, he's going to tear it up. Because like maybe some days he's going to get 6 of those moments and look incredible. Maybe someday he's only going to get 2, but we only need him to have 2 to convert 2, right? Not like to make that moment count twice. And so like, yeah, you would look at it and you'd be like, wow, Mo didn't play well. But it's also sort of like, it's a numbers game. How many moments can we get him? And how many do we need from him? And like, obviously over the long run, you want to maximize those moments. That's what you want to train for, in my mind, is like, how do you train yourself to maximize these moments? I've been talking probably for 15 straight minutes. This is like an idea that has been very central to me. And like, it's different from how most individuals look at their role within a team sport. And I spend a lot of time, this to me is sort of like the almost like advanced piece is like once I've worked with someone for a long time and the basics are down, this is what I want their mentality to switch to. Because I think it's what ultimately leads to the most effectiveness. How do you maximize the things you're good at and then just keep making moments and converting those moments? If you can get really good at converting your moments, you're golden.
You are golden. And I think that's skills that we try to build in individuals for everyday life. Like, I was running a parents course this morning, and it was the second session, and they came back in, and last week we did the first session, and one of the moms went, I learned a valuable lesson myself, and she's twin daughters, and she said they both came out with results in the same class for whatever subject it was, and one of my kids did really, really well, and the other one didn't do so well. And she said, I caught myself saying, well done to the one who did well, and zoning in and having a full-scale conversation about what went wrong with the one who didn't do as well. And she said, the difference for me now, having had just one session, you know, was I was able to go, okay, maybe she did the best that she could on that day. And maybe she put more effort in and actually exceeded her potential results on that day than the other one. It's just they're different people. It suited her better. And she was able to take the step back and go, okay, maybe I need to ask her, are you happy with how you did relative to the work that you put in? Because maybe the one who got 8 out of 10, for example, was devastated. But it is about being able to look at ourselves and go, we assume everybody's best is going to look the way we think it should look.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know. And for us, Mo Salah's best might be him getting 7 out of those 8 opportunities and converting them. But that best is just impossible to maintain all the time. And there are so many other variables and factors that come into play on any given day in anything that we do. So it is about, in life, recognizing that this is the best that I could do today. And Mo didn't play particularly well last night. He gave away, he lost through poor passing or poor decisions, probably 3 or 4 situations that could have resulted in us getting an opportunity or scoring. But he assisted and he scored.
Mm-hmm.
And we won.
Yeah.
So maybe if we're working with Mo Salah, we don't need to get him to beat the shit out of himself, because the reality is he's going to be more critical of himself than anybody else on the planet. And maybe we just need to accept that, well, he got his moments and he executed enough of those moments for us to actually benefit and win the match.
Mm-hmm. And I was just working with someone yesterday, and I have this sheet, which I don't know if there's video, but for people who have video, I just diagrammed what a sheet looks like on my fingers, just in case no one knows what the shape of a piece of paper. I have this sheet that I use with people that's meant to help them switch their thinking into something that's more process focused. And really what it is, there's a box that has their strengths, there's a box that we turn it into identity. And the difference between strengths, which is a list of things you're good at, and identity is the difference between skills and impact. Skills are the things you can do. Impact is how those affect the game. Your identity as an athlete playing is to take those skills and take the things you're good at and how does that affect the game going on? And so then you take that identity and you break it up into, we have it broken up into offense, defense, mentality. These are the expectations I have for myself. When I'm playing well on the offensive side of the game, I get myself we'll go with Mo Salah. With the offensive side of the game, I make runs to get in behind. I try to get the ball between the lines where I can cut in onto my left foot. I look to make plays from that. But maybe what are the positions you want to get yourself in? That's kind of what are your moments based on your strengths. So it's you're fast. That's why you want to get in behind. Your finishing is pretty good. So it's that's why you want to get yourself in spots to shoot. In particular, your finishing is good with the curl shot from your left foot. Or if you get in that certain area that we all know, he can make a lot of things happen from there. And so maybe his focus on the offensive side of the game is just get into space in that area. And that's what you pay attention to. How do you get into space in that area? And so now let's say you're going to go back and you're going to watch your video from the day. You're going to watch your clips. The only thing I want you to evaluate yourself on is how well did you get yourself into that area and get yourself open in that area? Were you if you saw that a defender wasn't looking at you, did you take advantage of that? When you get into that area, did you execute? That matters too. And if you're watching your video and you find wow, really regularly, I wasn't making this run when I had this opportunity, or really regularly when I got the ball, I was trying to force the big curled shot to the far post. Then it's okay, work on that. And how do you work on that next week? So it's like you had 7 of these opportunities. None of them worked. None of them worked because you were trying to force this shot. You know, how do you practice? What's a different option? What option was open? And then you take that and you work on it for the next week. But what you don't beat yourself up about is like the 1% mistake, where it was like that ball was played into me and like I had a bad touch and it got taken off me. Because most of the time you're going to make that touch and be fine. If all of a sudden it's like I was getting myself into space, but I couldn't control the ball because every time someone zipped the pass into me, I didn't handle it. Then it's like, okay, work on that this week. Between this game and next game, find some time to focus on that thing. Same on the defensive side. How do I define the defensive side of my game? And then I evaluate myself on that. That means if the defensive side of my game is about like tracking back really hard and not allowing a certain thing, leverage, maybe there's a moment where I missed a tackle. Don't beat yourself up about that unless you're missing all of your tackles. Then work on your tackling, but don't worry about the 1% thing. And so I think like actually with the Ibu Allison thing against Wolves, right? Ibu walks away from that and probably I say to him, don't worry about it too much. It's annoying, but don't, like, the less you can let that bother you, the better. Probably I say to Allison, work on your communication with those. We've had like 5 of those in the past few years. And so like with him, that's an example where there's a trend, there's a repeated thing that probably is worth paying attention to and working on, and then being mindful, how do I work on that? And maybe my focus this week is on communicating with my defenders. And so the goal I set for myself is every time the ball comes back in through there, I'm telling them what I want them to do. Maybe the way I work on that is I want to be more aggressive in coming to balls that my defenders are shielded. And so then, either I set up a way to work on that, or, I push myself to be really aggressive with coming to those balls that they're shielded. But either way, it's like, how am I working on that and then building that habit afterward? But what are the kinds of moments I want to maximize and hold myself accountable for? What does my game look like? And then building that.
Yeah, I think you're highlighting a really important perspective, which is around accountability. You're not talking about getting people to gloss over the things that aren't going well and forget about it and kind of go, oh, isn't everything just fluffy clouds and unicorns? And all the while you're on the Titanic and it's sinking. It's not about that. It's about going, right, this is what we set out for you to do. This is the goal we want you to do. And how many times did you do it? Right, okay. And then from there, what was the next progression? And what prevented you from progressing? Or well done for actually progressing onto the shot, the cross, the pass, whatever it might be. So all of a sudden they're going, right, I am doing things well. I'm starting to actually maneuver and get into the positions they want me to be in. They trust me enough to know that the rest will take care of itself. Mm-hmm. So if I have any doubts in myself at all, which we all can have at different times, but I suspect Mo Salah is probably not doubting himself in his ability to score a goal.
No.
Like, he probably just isn't. He's probably just more surprised when it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, like, but you're getting them to be accountable, and also you're asking them, what do you think you could do differently to improve that situation or improve the follow-through if it needs to be followed through?
Yeah.
So you're not actually telling them like a child being scolded, you didn't do this. It's, what do you think you could do differently? And then you might give options. Well, maybe you could see Dom, he's making that run behind you every single time. And one of those, he's making that run. Maybe you can play it into him sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And
you're just giving them options.
Right. Is that something you want to change about your game? And so one of the hard conversations that I often end up having with people is like, what's the stuff you're going to be comfortable not being good at, not being excellent at? Mm-hmm. Because you can't be excellent at everything. And sometimes that's what I see players spending a lot of time maximizing their skills rather than their impact. And then if they do something wrong, they're like, oh, I got to work on this skill more. And so, like, obviously it's worthwhile being good at penalties. But let's say that you are eighth in your team in terms of the order for penalties. Like, do you really want to put a ton of time into that? You know, is that going to maximize your potential to get better at that? It's good to get better at that, but let's just say, like, look, there's plenty of people around who can take these. I'm not going to be in this position to be taking them anyways. I'm a center back. Like, do I need to take 1,000 penalties or whatever? And it's like, obviously you get to that one moment, the penalty can be a high stakes thing. So maybe it's not the best example, but like, let's say that you're James Milner, who was very good at penalties, and you miss a penalty, but your percentage for those is really high. If I was working with you and then you came to me and you said, well, this week I'm really going to drill penalties because I missed that penalty. What I would say, I would ask you, what is that about? Right? Is that about you actually think that you're not as, like, you've gotten worse at them? And so there's something with your technique that needs improving where you think there's an issue? Is that about you getting your confidence back because missing one, like, you just want to prove to yourself that actually you are really consistent with it? Or is that about punishing yourself because you're frustrated because it didn't go in and it was a big moment, and like emotionally you're frustrated and annoyed and it was something everyone saw, but actually you're going to make the next 99 out of 100? Because if you think there's an issue with your technique, that's a great reason to practice. If you want to just prove to yourself you can do it, it's a good reason to practice. If you're just doing it because you're mad or you're disappointed or you're embarrassed, that's a terrible reason. That's a waste of your time to try to practice something that you don't need to get better at. There's plenty of things all of us can get better at. And so it's like with this idea of maximizing your impact, there's just certain things that you need to let go. And you need to be able to say, like, okay, like, that wasn't perfect, but this is my game. And I wonder about that for this team. Like, there's a lot that's not perfect. I think what Slot is trying to perfect is our game. And I think probably right now that's more about not giving them much defensively and just like being tight, getting people into the box, everyone getting back hard, and then continuing to really make them efficient at maximizing our moments.
I like it. If that's what's happened, I'm all for it. And people will always throw out the but, you know, but we'll top the league. Yeah, we're 2 wins out of 2 in the Champions League. And we have a brand new coach. We have a brand new coaching team. We have new systems in place. And we're still maximizing the opportunities, bar one game. So, yeah, it was about just trusting that this process is moving in the direction that it needs to be moving in.
And I think looking at ourselves, especially in sport, more like a dice than a single thing, right? And sometimes that's what we see. It's like, I can make that shot, so like I'm capable of making X shot, right? So I should be able to do that 100% of the time. That's so often how we approach things and how I see athletes think about it. I know I can do that. Why couldn't I do that there? Because you're playing against people, because situations are different, because context is different, because even something we're really good at, we don't get right 100% of the time. I've tied my shoes a lot. I'm all right at it. Sometimes they come untied. When they come untied, I don't beat myself up about it. I'm not thinking like, oh, like, let me go on YouTube. Like, how the fuck do you tie shoes? Like, let me get this sorted. What's the best way to tie shoes? Maybe I should. I don't know. But like, that's not, like, I don't do that. And I think in the same way, you know, there's always the time when it's not going to work. And so when I say think of yourself more like a dice, like anytime you're rolling a dice, like there's a chance you get a 1, there's a chance you get 6, there's a chance you get whatever. So let's say you're 50% with your big chance conversion, which I think is actually really good, right? If you're 50%, you're phenomenal, right? If you rolled a dice 4 times and didn't get an odd number, you would say, all right, that's weird, but it's not impossible. If you rolled a dice 10 times and you didn't get an odd number, you'd just be like, oh, wow, how about this? Like, this is kind of crazy. If you did it 15 times, you'd be like, this is nuts. But you wouldn't say, like, this dice is broken. Yeah. And that's sometimes the mistake that athletes make is like 50% chance conversion is a really high number. But if they get 3 chances in a game and they don't make any, they're like, oh, there's something wrong with me. It's like, maybe not. Be patient. If you're doing the things, you're getting yourself in your spots, pick one piece you want to work on that might improve. Like if you're looking at those chances and now you can see, oh, I didn't look up to see where the goalie was, or I rushed my shot all 4 of those times. Then you can say, okay, like let me practice this week slowing down in that moment. Let me practice looking up to see, but what's the small little thing you can sort of work on? Don't totally cave on, oh my God, I'm not making any of my chances. If you're 50% and you've had 10 chances and you've only converted 1, like that's bad luck, but it's not crazy. Look at your process, evaluate your process. But if your process is good, keep doing it. Yeah. And that's, I think when you look at this team and you look at the numbers, are there things to improve? Absolutely. But the process is good in terms of if we're a dice right now and you look at the XG for most of those games, you're comfortable with the likelihood that we're going to win 75% of our games. Now it becomes interesting, how do we react to tougher opponents? And does this process hold up when other teams are more skilled at maybe taking advantage of the key moments we're giving them? Completely possible. And then maybe there's bigger questions to ask, but you can't evaluate. You can only pick pieces at a time to really be mindful of. You can only get better at one thing at a time. And that's especially important when you've got a new coach.
And you can't be focused on, yeah, but we're playing big teams in a month's time. You gotta just focus on today.
Right.
Andrew, this has been a really, really interesting podcast and probably one of your most insightful ones, I think. I really enjoyed listening to you. And I
pretty much all this week because I barely gave you a chance to talk. So I apologize for that.
That's probably good for everybody. But listeners, I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And yeah, we'll be back on the Mindful podcast very soon.